Welcome to the Compass Method, powered by Purpose and Plants, where science meets soul and thriving begins when you find your true north. Hosted by Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill, a double board certified physician, mother of three, and founder of the Tiny Beat Lifestyle Medicine and Pediatric Clinic, and
Chelsea Dye, a certified lifestyle medicine coach, wellness strategist, and creator of Alchemist Untamed. This show brings the real science to real life, powered by our passion project, Purpose and Plan.
Each episode explores how small shifts in food, movement, mindset, and family life can create massive results. Together, Dr. Yolanda and I share a compass for better life, a grounded guide to plant-forward health, brain-body balance, and modern motherhood.
From pediatric wellness and family health to neuroscience, nutrition, and mindset mastery, we will help you pause with a purpose, align your habits with your values, and rediscover what it means to thrive.
Powered by Purpose and Plants, because thriving begins when you're powered by Purpose and Plants. Hello, and welcome to the Compass Method. I am Chelsea Dye.
And I'm Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill.
And together, we will bring you tools, tips, and tricks to live a happier, healthier life, one step at a time, using your compass, your true north. Today, we are talking about anxiety. So this is a two-part episode, and the first part will be breaking down what anxiety really is, and so you can actually have a foundational understanding, because I think this term gets used a lot without the base understanding. And then in the second part of the episode, we will be reviewing things that you can utilize in your life and the life of your loved ones to help you manage anxiety and even potentially avoid it altogether. So why don't we start a little bit about my personal journey with anxiety? Does that work for you?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that and many times in our episodes, we talk about themes that for some people could be a triggering factor. Mm-hmm. So be aware that this is what we're going to be talking about. So if this is something that you feel that it might trigger you, might want to stop and look for help or see it with somebody else so you can discuss what we're talking. But our idea is to help. And if you need help from other people, that's absolutely go for it.
And we're here to help. So before we even dive in, I think that's a good point, that we should take a really strong double inhale and a singular exhale, which actually works to calm our nervous system. So let's do it together.
I like that.
Inhale through the nose, and then exhale. You can do that again one more time. So the key there is actually to have a longer exhale than inhale. So we're really oxygenating those lungs and sending our nervous system a calming signal. So I have had a long journey of learning how to manage my own personal anxiety. It's been something that has been a challenge for me since probably since I can remember, but definitely into my teens. I developed pretty strong, sometimes debilitating, depending on what stage of my life I was in, anxiety. And I also, as I've shared, have ADHD. So often the anxiety and the ADHD go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.
Yes.
That's not unusual.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I discovered lifestyle medicine and the principles that we have at our fingertips, movement, sleep, nourishment, community and connection, and mindset. Those are 5 of the 6 pillars that we really work with. And on a personal front, I've used in different stages of my life, every single one of those to help me to manage and stave off anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about anxiety and what it is and where it originates in the brain.
First, I wanted to say that, you fascinate me because I admire you a lot. But it's interesting that this was intuitively, like you kept searching. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you found all these things is because you were curious. You were so wanting to learn more and more. And that's what got you to a point that you learned what works for you and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. You learn what you need to avoid and what you need to work with. And this is what we want for people to understand, that this is something that anybody isn't at the tips of everybody's hands, like it's doable. So let's start from the beginning.
Yes. Our brain. So our brain
Yes.
is magical. And, Dr. Yolanda and I speak so much about how our brain governs everything, and the gut and the brain is connected. But when you understand why you can sometimes go into anxiety in inexplicable, quick ways, and then for what seems like not a big reason, when you look at the brain, the science of the brain, that's where it all starts.
Yes,
So,
it's such a powerful tool even for kids to understand this. I was showing Chelsea that this is something that I use in my office and the tiny bit with my patients.
Yeah, and I think we have a graphic here.
Yes,
which
we have
can
a
put on
graphic
the screen
too.
as well.
There you go. So here, it doesn't show the prefrontal cortex that, like in this book, it says that this is our wise brain, and that's the part of the brain that is above our eyes. Our forehead is behind our forehead.
Well, let's walk through what happens if we experience something that might be potentially a trigger or might be perceived as an episode that would create anxiety. So let's say you're walking into a test and you're sitting down to take a test. You're a student. You're sitting down to take a test. Talk me through what happens in the different regions of the brain. The amygdala first.
The amygdala is
what is
like
that first?
is the part of the brain. We saw it in there in the graph. It's kind of like in the middle of the brain, and this is the way it's described for a kid is the dog. We have a dog that is alarming us. It's an alarm system that is the part that it deals with our emotions. And you're gonna take a test. The dog is in an alarm mode, like, okay, we need to be, there's something happening.
Alert.
We're anxious.
Yes,
alert.
We need to be alert, which is a good thing.
Or the same way that there is a fire in your house. You want that dog in the amygdala to be barking at you, to be annoying, because you need to run, get out of here, or get help, or help someone. So that's when the amygdala is very useful.
So that amygdala is what helps create that attention, that alertness inside of our brain, which sometimes our body can't even distinguish between something like a test and a true emergency, that in some people, that amygdala gets to level 10 even when it shouldn't be at level 10. So then walk us through what happens after that.
Yes. So what happens is the alarm system is there to help us, but the alarm system cannot be on at all times. This is where the problem is. This is a chronic anxiety state. So that would be maladaptive. That's not how it should work. So like in the example of the dog, we train that dog, and this is the wonderful thing that we can do is in our we can. So we train the dog like, okay, you learn to realize, to grade the level of the anxiety that it should be. Does it warrant for me to be running out of here when it's just that I'm going to take a test? Is it something that is my life is in danger? Or is it something that I had to tell my dog, okay, yeah, we need to be alert, but we can be sitting here and do this. We can do this with techniques that we can learn.
Well, and the challenge is if the amygdala cannot distinguish the importance of a factor, whether it's highly stressful or not, it can send our entire body and another part of our brain which impacts all of the rest of our bodily sensations into high stress mode. So it happens so fast. So we assess, is this something that creates high, that we need to be on high alert and protect ourselves from? And if so, then our brain is magical. It sends all these signals. It goes next to the hypothalamus.
Yes.
Yeah.
But one thing is, yes, when you have the amygdala, one of the best tools that we have to control that is when we put our prefrontal cortex to work. So it's either the alarm, the amygdala is working, or the prefrontal cortex. And that's when just naming it, like, okay, realizing, okay, I am doing a test. My system is in alert and I am safe. I can do this. And those, there's one of the tools, the breathing, the talking, the wise words. And those are the words that you use to calm your dog.
So before we go there, let's reiterate that we can't be using our prefrontal cortex, our reasoning part of our brain, and be hyperactive in our reptilian brain, the one that protects us theoretically. So it's either or. So when you have that sensory come in of, say, taking a test and you sit down, and if you're unable to take yourself out of that level 9 or 10, then your prefrontal cortex is not actually even capable of working. So, the tools that you have, the tools that you create on a lifestyle front are of crucial importance for managing your anxiety. And I think we all know that, but when you think about it from the brain, it's either or. So
yeah. No, and I think it's so powerful to understand that this is not that we are wrong, we're designed wrong, like you're faulty, defective, is because you haven't probably developed these tools or you haven't learned. And the beauty as a pediatrician is that it works for the parents. Oh my goodness, imagine the kids learning to use these tools from the get-go, from infancy and beyond.
Well, and then let's go a little bit more into what happens in the brain. So if we can't get out of that extreme stress, anxiety mode, and one of the questions you can ask yourself, or one of the sort of statements that you can say is, so I'm feeling a sensation. And if that, not, oh Lord, this is the end of the world. I'm feeling a sensation. Acknowledging that and taking a deep breath can sometimes shift it into your ability to use the prefrontal cortex. However, if you're not capable of doing it, then it actually creates a trigger effect on the rest of your body, so that it's basically only going to elevate your heart rate and to put you in a position where you are
incapacitated.
Yes, but prioritizing survival.
Okay.
And
yes.
so that's what it's doing. It's essentially putting you into a mode where you're prioritizing survival, which means that these secondary functions of even digestion
Everything.
and
that's what people
reasoning.
Either vomit, when they're stressed, or they have all body functions can happen when you're stressed out.
Well, and so that is a big challenge. So we want to catch it in its tracks first off, so it doesn't make its way to the rest of the body and send those stress signals. And one poor night's sleep can diminish our capacity to catch it in, catch that dog, if we're going to say the barking dog, and allow it to, calm down. That ability is diminished, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It not only that, a bad night, lack of sleep can also interfere even with what you crave to eat. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You crave more of the wrong stuff, and then becomes a vicious cycle. You're gonna feel worse. The whole system gets affected. Aside from the fact that the brain does not regulate itself as good because of the lack of sleep.
Well, so learned relational skills and routines can help you to catch yourself in the middle of what could be an anxious situation and take yourself down. And, just as we talked about, there are tools that fall within all 5 of the pillars that you can reach to. And it's really about what's the easiest tool for you. But let's go to the immediate tool of first we label the emotion. And then what happens after that?
When we label the emotion, you activate the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
The first thing is a pause. We should say that.
Yeah.
If you cannot pause in the moment, you're not going to be able to label the emotion. Okay. And having an emotion vocabulary for kids is such a powerful tool that parents can do, and it starts from they're very little. Okay, you're frustrated. Or you feel like maybe because you didn't sleep good, and then start putting that, oh, maybe I am sleepy, maybe I am, then that vocabulary, it starts working on the prefrontal cortex.
Well, let's think about adults. Even we can do that and look from a bird's eye view at ourselves and say, that's me, and I'm feeling, overwhelmed because I haven't had enough sleep, or I haven't been nourished properly, or I'm dehydrated. But what happens after we pause? Then we get curious, right?
Yes. You're. I was listening to something that I saw on the internet the other day of a kid that she said that she reframed. When I'm nervous, when my heart is beating fast, is my heart applauding to me because I'm doing something really hard.
Oh.
I loved it. I mean, these are the kind of tools. So she's curious that, okay, when I'm nervous, it's because I'm trying something hard. And it's not because I cannot do it. It's the opposite. It's my body is telling me, wow, you're doing something hard and you can do it. And then
let's put a pin on that
Yes.
and talk about that with the next episode, because I want to say how sometimes our bodies can think things are hard when they're really not, because we've created a stressful internal situation. But let's go on.
Now, when you were talking about curiosity, one of the things that we had to ask, is it true? And it could be from the news. Listening to the news, for example, they can trigger a lot of anxiety. But a lot of the things that you can see in the news might not necessarily be true. So you start thinking, is this something true? Or even for something, I'm nervous because I feel that I cannot do this. Is it true? So start digging a little bit deeper.
Let's go back to the test example. So I feel like I want to run out or throw up, or I don't know any of this information and my heart's pounding really fast and I don't even know how to read the words on the page. And then you can stop, pause, think, okay, I'm having a reaction to it. And then, oh, I don't know any of these words. Is that actually true? And when you take a moment, you might perhaps think, oh, no, that's not true. I know some of them.
Exactly.
And that can allow you to have that built-in pause. But then,
One thing that helped me through school, it was to think, when I was like getting out of control, I was thinking, what is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is I get an F in this test. Nobody's going to die. I just, have to deal with this after.
Yeah.
But at this moment, that's not in my control, is to try to do the best that I can do now. So that's how I was like, I like to think, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? So that was my way to be curious about that.
And then another thing is, okay, so identifying the emotion and then connecting it to the sensation, because so often, just as you were bringing up the heart, different people feel anxiety in different places. Butterflies in the stomach. For me, it's my low belly, and I just feel like, To
me, it's here.
Shoulders or hips or jaw. So then you can connect that stress to an area in your body, and oftentimes you can even open and close your jaw, and that can help alleviate some of the stress. Or maybe do a little neck stretch one way or the other, and that can help alleviate that stress. And then let's talk about the next one.
Are you safe? Am I safe? And this is when you're getting out of control, when things are getting out of control. Am I safe? Because I'm in a classroom. The ceiling is not falling. The walls are still intact. I am safe right now. So what can you do? Grounding is one of the great exercises that anybody can do. The kids can do anywhere,
Or in a meeting. I mean, I think there are plenty of adults who can feel anxious, especially if they have to present and they're maybe not, they don't feel as capable of presenting. So grounding, 2 feet on the ground. What else?
You want to start thinking 5 things that I can see. I can see a table. I can see a microphone. I can see a necklace. I can see beautiful lady. I can see TV. I can see what things that I can see. Then 4 things that I can feel. And you can do that even in a meeting or right before a meeting. I can feel my fabric. I feel different fabrics. I can feel texture of the table. I can feel different textures. 5 things that you can feel. I mean, 4. And then 3 things that you can hear. What this is doing, again, is trying to use the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, to to be engaged because you cannot do all these things with the amygdala. This is they're thinking, the wise brain that is doing this for you, and you're engaging it. And then 3 things you can hear. You have to stop and try to hear 3 different things. Smell, try to smell something, if it's your skin or your fabric, and then taste, which is usually water. Drinking water alone helps. So
one thing I like to bring up about smell is, our olfactory senses are pretty amazing, and they're connected to memory, but they can also help to calm us. So a trick that I have used for a long time is if I know I'm going to be in a stressful situation, there are these rollers that have different essential oils, and lavender is one that's notorious for calming.
Yes.
Peppermint is really good for engaging the brain. If you're anxious, it may not have the perfect impact, but I know that lavender is great. So when I used to be in situations where I would have to take tests, I would bring lavender with me.
That's a great idea.
And know that, I might put it on my pulse point and know, okay, I have that here. That's in my control, and it's a reminder. And so
And in terms of the what you can feel, some people have in their pocket something, an object that takes their attention away, or something that is meaningful to them.
like a little flat stone.
A little something, yes, something that's helpful too. It takes it diverts that.
So let's just review that. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can feel, 3 things I can hear, 2 things that I can smell, and 1 thing I can taste. So, that you can pretty much do anywhere and is applicable for any age.
Yes, exactly.
And this actually made me think of, there are many people who are afraid of flying, and this would be a perfect tool to bring with you, where and that
you rinse and repeat.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
And that is enough to actually distract you into being able to calm down and take a couple of slow breaths.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about, before we close this out, let's talk a little bit about some data. And so I want to clarify, because stress is a positive thing in some ways. Chronic low-level anxiety is not, but there are certain instances where anxiety and stress are really useful, and they, before you run a track meet, I coach youth track, and before you run a track meet, you don't want to be so anxious, but you want alertness. You want to be in a position where you're ready. A moderate sympathetic activation can support focus.
Absolutely.
So we don't want to say that, you need to be completely calm when you're taking that test. I think you don't need the level of anxiety, but alertness is really good.
Absolutely.
So flow state is something that we really want to think about. And then another thing that research supports that, and we'll dive more into this, inflammation. Chronic anxiety has been associated with elevated levels of interleukin 6, which has been linked to immune strain, overall inflammation, and higher cardiovascular. And I can put in the show notes some research about that. So our body, when we have that low grade of inflammation, can start to feel anxious, which then sends the signal to our brain that we're always at level 6, even when we're sitting in the car, or a 7, which I think is interesting. And what about the sleep science behind it? We talked on this.
Yeah, we said that we have to make an episode on sleep alone, because sleep does helps our brain to recuperate from the day before. And it helps us, our memory and all these other things, systems, that the whole system, every organ in our body benefits from sleep, or, gets affected from lack of sleep. And, one of the things I just mentioned is the craving of junk food. It's been tested and it's been proven that, and then you can say it by yourself, why am I craving this? Why? I normally don't think. Did you get a good night's sleep last night? Maybe.
And then the vicious cycle continues, because repetitive ultra processed foods create low levels of
Yes.
inflammation, which tells your body that it's stressed.
Which is so important for kids, And when I go to the community, sometimes events, I always like to have something that shows how much sleep kids need by age. And it's surprised. Parents get so surprised. Oh, he's getting only 8 hours, thinking, this is adults. No, this is adults. A kid needs 10 hours.
Because their brain is so rapidly developing.
It's a different animal altogether. It's a different ballgame. And the parents thinking that they're doing the right thing. So that alone, it is beneficial. And
then
what else?
I think that we can dive into a little bit more in the second episode, and I'd like for you to be able to have your Spanish recap. But I think we need to acknowledge that. I know we need to acknowledge that anxiety is not simply an emotional weakness; it's a biological reaction. So there's a lot of people that struggle with anxiety, and I know from a personal front that.
So how did you
there's a shame component that's associated with anxiety. So when you feel shameful about feeling anxious in situations that from a thinking brain, you shouldn't be anxious about, your gut reaction, if you don't choose to really acknowledge, is to draw back. And obviously that creates a cycle that creates isolation. So acknowledging that it's an emotional reaction and that you may not have control over everything, but you are, or that it's a biological reaction rather, that
Exactly.
that you can acknowledge the biological component, and that takes a little bit of the personal onus off of it. And the goal is not zero stress, it's a flexible recovery. And that is something that I think is so important.
And another thing, like you said, like it isolates you. Having a community, like being able to speak about that with someone that you trust, is so crucial. We are human beings. We are people. I mean, we're creatures of connection. That isolation is one of the worst things that can happen at any age. And having that level of comfort with a person, it's such an important thing for recovery and for understanding that it's okay to talk about that. And
one of the biggest things for me before we move on to episode 2 that I realized made a big difference was the talking about it and being vocal that I'm experiencing, and test taking. The reason I brought up test taking is I might even get teary-eyed, but I'm dyslexic. And so while I have become really good with learning information, I almost have a photographic memory, not quite, but I'm closer to that now. That's not been my experience growing up with traditional school. So every time I went to sit down to take a test, I thought I was going to die. And especially when I was younger, and with the time tests in addition. So even from a really young age, I was fortunate in that I had a really wonderful community and parents that, unbeknownst to them, sort of equipped me with those tools of understanding the breath work and the foundation of nutrition. But it was only through practice, repetitive practice of my feet are on the ground. I have my, my water. I have, because I did that even before declaring it, knowing that I had the sense around me that I needed, that I had a particular, without being too stuck in my way. I had a seat in the classroom that felt a little bit more comfortable than the other seats, and that if I could create that, then that would create a happier environment. And so that has been pretty magical for me on a personal front, but it's gone into that test-taking capability has gone into every area of my life, and that started really young. So, are there any other things that you want to say about the foundation of anxiety and before we break and go to episode number 2?
I want people to understand that the stress regulation is something that it can be learned, that it's not something that, many people are not born with that. You're anxious. You might have some more anxious tendencies, and you have more reasons to be anxious, like learning difficulties. But the actual management of that is not something that you learn. And it's just like, it's so important that we practice those things. And with the kids, for example, when we are not stressed, okay?
Oh, yes. Practicing
So
when you're not in a stressful
It's
state.
just like if you're going to play the violin in front of a crowd, you're not going to start practicing the moment that, the moment that you're in front of the crowd. It's just like anything, learning to read, learning to play an instrument. This is no different. This is like a muscle that you have to develop. It's technique. And then you do it practicing when you're relaxed. And then you can do it and I've seen kids reminding the parents, Mom, I think you need to take a breath.
Yeah.
And let's take a breath together. And or to a sibling. It's the cutest thing. I think you need to take a deep breath now. And they learn it and they can use it. And it's so powerful for the kid or that is being helped as for the kid that is doing the help.
Well, and just on that note, before we close out, I think this is an opportunity for all of us just to know that speaking about it and even engaging in tools in community. So sitting down before a meeting and all taking a deep breath together, I think is a really wonderful way to get things started. So let's do our special Spanish recap, and then you'll have to make sure to join us for the next episode on more solutions, really specific solutions for anxiety.
Buenas. Bueno, para mis familias latinas, estamos hablando de la ansiedad. Y la ansiedad es algo que, una de las cosas que queremos que la gente entienda, es algo normal en el cerebro. Es una reacción normal del cerebro, excepto cuando todo es un problema, ¿no? Por ejemplo, la amígdala, que es la parte del cerebro que determina eso, si siempre imagínense que es un perrito y ese perrito está ladrando de cualquier cosa. Ya sea es una alarma que se dispara, ya sea que porque estás cocinando o porque hay un fuego, ¿ok? Y cuando ese es el sistema está funcionando así, hay un problema. Pero se puede entrenar, igualito que el perrito, se puede entrenar. Y la manera que se entrena es utilizando la parte prefrontal de la cabeza. Cuando decimos, por ejemplo, reconocemos, hacemos una pausa, reconocemos. Ok, el perrito me está ladrando y no tiene que ladrar ahora porque yo estoy bien, yo me siento segura. Así que, ¿qué podemos hacer? Puedo respirar, hacer profunda, qué es lo que me funciona y aprender técnicas cuando uno está relajado para poderlas utilizar cuando uno está en estrés. Y los niños la aprenden súper bien. Gracias.
Gracias. And you have just joined us for another episode of the Compass Method. And I'm Chelsea Dye.
And Dr. Yolanda Rivera-Caudill.
And we empower you to discover your true north and the power of a pause.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Cheers.